Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission here is to take a whole stack of source material, kind of sift through all the noise, and pull out the insights that really matter so you can walk away feeling truly informed. Today, we're dissecting a Monday Night Football result that, well, on paper it looks pretty standard. San Francisco 49ers beat the Carolina Panthers 20-9. But when you actually start peeling back the layers, you look at the game tape, you read the post-game commentary we reviewed, you find this chaotic, frustrating game. It was defined by these extremes. You had a historic individual performance on one side, and on the other, a complete team meltdown in terms of execution. And it was all wrapped up in this really heavy dose of emotion and reunion. Our sources lay out the whole story, and our mission really is to answer a question. In these super high-stakes environments, how much can one single player's routine cover up some really severe flaws in the overall machine?
It's a total paradox, isn't it? And we have to start where the sources start, which is with the main character of the night, Christian McCaffrey. This was him facing the Carolina Panthers, the team that drafted him way back in 2017 for the very first time since that huge trade to the 49ers in 2022. So that dynamic right out of the gate, it just sets the stage for what could have been a really volatile, emotional night.
Okay, let's unpack that, because normally, a player faces their old team and the whole story is about revenge or some big emotional moment. But with McCaffrey, his performance was like the one clean, dominant spot in an otherwise really messy game. He's a ninth-year vet, and he delivered. 142 total yards, 89 rushing, 53 receiving, and a touchdown. He was the anchor.
He was the anchor, exactly.
Yeah.
And what the sources really stress is that his dominance was rooted in the complete absence of emotion. When they asked him about the pressure of the matchup, his answer, which we pulled right from the interviews, was just so clear. He said it was, quote, really just business once the ball was snapped. And he doubled down on that. He kept talking about the need to stay in your routine and not get too far outside of what's normal.
But is that just what they have to say?
Yeah.
Did the sources give any hint that the emotion broke through, even for a second? Because doing that against a team that knows you better than anyone, that takes some serious mental strength.
That's a great question. And what the sources imply is that his prep during the week was the key. He just went all in on his physical routine, the diet, the treatment, the film study, maybe even more than usual, just to block out all that noise. And he also gave himself a kind of intellectual out. He pointed out that the Panthers are a completely new team than when I was there.
Right. So he's basically saying this isn't even the team I played for.
Exactly. He reframed it. It stopped being this big personal reunion, and it just became another logistical problem to solve on a Monday night. It's like the ultimate lesson in high-level sports psychology, right?
Yeah.
Consistency, procedure. It beats feeling and sentimentality every single time, especially when there's money and playoff chances on the line.
And his consistency, it wasn't just about winning the game. It actually bought him a spot in some, incredibly rare historical company. This is where we move from the mental game to just the hard stats of his value. And that consistency you mentioned leads right to this.
Yeah.
This just mind-blowing stat about why he's such a unicorn.
Yeah, we throw around the term dual threat all the time, but McCaffrey's ability to do it for so long in both parts of the game, that's what's different.
Okay, so get this. His 53 receiving yards in this one game pushed him into one of the most exclusive clubs in all of league history. He is now only the third running back ever to have over 50 receiving yards in at least 50 different games.
50 games.
That's almost 3 full seasons of being a top-tier receiver from the running back position.
That is the aha moment. That's where you understand his real value. And you look at the names he's with now, Larry Saunders, who had 55 games like that, and the great Marshall Faulk, who is now tied with McCaffrey at 50. When you're talking about the history of the position, that is some seriously elite company. But the context here is so important.
Okay, so help us with that context. Marshall Faulk, he played in a different era, right? Maybe an era where running backs were used differently in the passing game. Why is it arguably even harder for a guy like McCaffrey to do this today?
It's all about specialization and managing a player's workload. In today's NFL, everything is so specialized. You have a third down back who might get the receiving yards, but he doesn't get the carries.
Right.
Then you have a power runner who gets all the carries but is never targeted in the pass game. McCaffrey is one of the very few left who gets an elite workload in both rushing and receiving, game after game, year after year. And the sources show that his 142 yards were so crucial because they were the baseline. It was the one part of the offense that was working almost no matter what else was going on. He was the foundation when the whole structure was, about to collapse.
And speaking of collapsing, that kind of brings us to the really big question about the rest of the ship. Let's pivot to the winner's execution crisis. Specifically, the, catastrophic first half from 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy. The sources called the game not pretty at times, which is a huge understatement. Purdy's first half was a disaster zone. They specifically point out he threw 3 interceptions. 3 in the first half alone. In the NFL, 3 turnovers from your quarterback in one half. That's usually a recipe for a blowout loss.
It absolutely should have been. But this is the key little piece of analysis that shows why the Panthers couldn't win. They only managed to score 3 points off all 3 of those turnovers.
Wow.
They just squandered every single gift Purdy handed them. That's the kind of thing that drives coaches absolutely insane. And if you think about momentum, the Panthers just failed to land the killer blow. Were those picks forced? Were they just mistakes? Well, Purdy, to his credit, he owned it completely afterwards.
So why did the reporters keep asking about his toe injury if he just dismissed it? Were they trying to give him an out or something?
Oh, they were absolutely trying to find another reason for it. But Purdy just shut it down. He refused to use the toe as an excuse. Instead, his own criticism of himself was all about mechanics. It suggests a failure of control, not some physical injury. He said, and his words were very clear, "I needed to just drive the ball a little bit more. I kept it up in the air too long on multiple of them." That quote right there tells you everything. He's admitting to a technical, fundamental breakdown. He just left the ball hanging. His final stat line, 23 of 32 for 193 yards, 1 TD, and those 3 huge picks. It's the definition of a volatile day.
It wasn't just him. The other QB, Bryce Young, he was 18 of 29 for 169 yards, a touchdown, but he had 2 interceptions himself, and he also took the blame, saying it was a lack of execution on their side too. So it sounds like a mutual failure of just clean football.
That's it exactly. This was a physical, ugly, low-scoring game where both teams felt like they were fighting themselves as much as the opponent. And that kind of game, one that's just defined by struggle and mistakes, it naturally builds up a ton of tension.
Which maybe leads us to the chaotic final punctuation mark of the whole night. When execution fails, frustrations boil over. And that's literally what happened at the end of the game. Let's talk about that post-game skirmish between Panthers safety Tre'Von Moehrig and 49ers receiver Jennings.
Yeah.
You're watching the final seconds tick away, the game's over, and then boom, a huge flashpoint. The sources detail Moehrig hitting Jennings in the groin area. It's a textbook cheap shot. And Jennings, of course, he immediately retaliates. He strikes Moehrig in the head before his teammates have to pull him away. It was just pure chaos.
A very unprofessional end to a game that was already defined by, unprofessional errors in execution. Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers coach, he did not mince words. He called it a cheap shot and said he was real proud of Sean for not losing his mind. He saw how bad the provocation was.
And Jennings himself, he kept it pretty simple. He just said he was responding to some childish behavior.
Right. But Moehrig, he tried to give some context. He said Jennings was being physical all game, but even he admitted right away he'd probably get fined. But the why of it all is the key to this deep dive. Isn't blaming frustration just the easy way out? If these guys were really operating on that professional level that McCaffrey set, that kind of stuff shouldn't happen. Yeah. That skirmish, it reveals the human cost of all this technical failures we were just talking about.
Wow.
When your professional control breaks down on the field, 3 interceptions, failing to score, that energy, that frustration, it doesn't just disappear, it turns toxic. It turns into aggression.
So the pressure cooker finally just blew.
In the least professional way possible.
That connects it all perfectly. All that pent-up frustration had to go somewhere. Okay, but let's bring it back to the bottom line. The win and the loss. The 49ers get the W, move to 8-4, and the playoff implications. They are massive. We've got some specific numbers from the NFL's own analytic models that really highlight what this one game meant. With this win, the 49ers now have an 86% chance of making the playoffs. That is some serious breathing room.
And now look at the total inverse for the Panthers. This one loss dropped them all the way down to just a 14% chance. But here's the most fascinating part of that. That 14% chance exists even though they are still just half a game out of first place in their division, the NFC South.
Wait, how is that even possible? How can you be half a game out of the lead, but the models give you, a 1-in-7 shot?
It seems counterintuitive, right? But it forces you to ask, what are the models seeing that's more important than just your current standing? And the answer is they're looking at predictive metrics, not historical ones. They're analyzing things like points added, turnover regression, future strength of schedule. So when the model sees a team fail to turn 3 huge turnovers into points, like the Panthers did, it basically screams that this team is operationally incapable of winning high-stakes games.
I see. It's a sign of a deeper problem.
A huge one. A 14% chance when you're that close says the model thinks you've been lucky to be this close, and that your underlying mechanics, your actual efficiency, it's just not good enough to win down the stretch. One ugly game has totally changed the story of their entire season.
So wrapping this all up, we've looked at a 20-9 game that was really a strange paradox. It was a professional win, sure, but it was fueled by one historic individual performance from McCaffrey, who was just a machine. But that performance was basically just masking these severe team-wide execution problems like Purdy's 3 picks. And it all culminated in that childish emotional outburst at the very end.
And our final takeaway for you is this. In these high-stakes worlds like the NFL, this idea of just business, that focus routine McCaffrey talked about, it's often just an ideal. It's not the reality. We can see so clearly how that ideal relies on one guy's incredible, historic consistency to basically bail out the very human mistakes and the volatility of everyone else. McCaffrey wasn't just scoring points. He was providing stability for the whole operation.
And here's one final thought for you to chew on, something that connects the stats to the emotion. If Brock Purdy had played a clean game, if he'd thrown 0 interceptions in that first half, how much bigger would the 49ers' lead have been? And would that kind of crushing clinical domination have prevented the cheap shots and the frustration that boiled over at the end? Does being dominant in itself prevent that kind of unprofessional behavior? Something to think about. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.